everyone. We'll call the November 8th, 2011 meeting of the Jackson City Council to order and ask Councilman Pepper Bray to lead us in our invocation and pledge. If you would, please rise.
Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for all the good things you do to us and for us. We want you to forgive us of the mistakes that we made in the past and help us to do better in the future. We'd like for you to bless in particular all our service men and women that are all over the world and our veterans, because if they weren't over there taking care of us, we probably wouldn't be here. Thank you for everything you do for us. God bless all these council people and help us lead, guide, and direct us in everything we do so we'll do a good job. These things we ask in our precious name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I get into the agenda, let me just recognize people that's with us this morning, some special guests. Representative Jimmy Eldridge is here in the front row. We have Sheriff Woolfork here also, and if I missed anyone else, thank you guys for being here, being a part of this. Roll call. Anita, you can show Councilman Wallace. Councilman Dodd absent, and that's my fault since we had to move the day of the meeting. Item 4 is approval of minutes of the October 4th, 2011 City Council meeting, and Council has received copies of those. Are there any additions or any corrections? If not, we'll go ahead and consider those approved. And item 5 is the invitation for public comment. If there's anyone here who would like to be recognized under new business, if you'd let me know at this point, I'll be happy to call on you once we get to that point. We have one proclamation this morning, which I'll go down and read, and ask Camicia Springfield, if she would, to come up to the podium. Okay, this is National Adoption Month, and Camicia Springfield is here. DCS, the Permanency Specialist for the Southwest Regional Adoption Unit, and I'll read this proclamation and make it a part of this meeting and present it to Camicia and ask her to make a few comments. It's a proclamation, whereas adoption is one of the ways in which families come together and provide for each other. And whereas adoption provides stability and roots for children who find themselves without these valuable tools, and whereas adoption makes the richness of parenthood available to those who might otherwise not be able to enjoy this privilege. Whereas every child deserves a family, and all efforts will be made for permanency of children in foster care in a timely manner. And whereas our community and our world are immeasurably improved by the presence of families who love and support each other. And whereas the Department of Children's Services has labored to present adoption as an option that will accommodate families desiring children and for children needing the security of a permanent home. Now therefore we, Jerry Guest, Mayor of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, and Jimmy Harris, Mayor of Madison County, Tennessee, do hereby proclaim November 2011 as National Adoption Month in Jackson, Madison County, Tennessee, and urge all citizens to join us in this worthy observance. Camicia, thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Mayor Gist. We just want to say on behalf of the Department of Children's Services that we thank Mayor Gist and Mayor Harris for also presenting us with this proclamation. What we do in November, we proclaim November as National Adoption Awareness Month because we want to make the community aware that we have children that are available for adoption and that are needing permanent homes. So even if it's nothing but a mentor or just a placement, that's permanent for them, we want y'all to know that they're available. We're here to support, and we want the community to support it as well. So thank you so much.
Council would, if you would strike item 1 under first readings, that ordinance will be coming back before council probably in January or February. We'll go down to first readings, go down to item 2. I have Stan here, consideration of ordinance to rezone property located at 428 North Cumberland Street from RG3 General Residential District to RG3H General Residential Historic District containing 0.28 acres, submitted by Kathy Leatherwood. Stan?
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
You have the materials pertinent to this rezoning request. This item was presented to the Historic Zoning Commission and to the Planning Commission, and they have both recommended approval of this rezoning to you.
Okay, this is first reading. Any questions, council?
I do have one quick question. Have you heard anything from the neighbors on this one?
No, sir, it's right adjacent to a historically zoned property, and she's just wanting to put both structures under that overlay.
Thanks.
Okay, before we vote, this is a ordinance on first reading, and we'll open the meeting for public hearing to see if there's anyone present who would like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance. If not, we'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion? Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 3 is consideration of an ordinance to close and abandon a portion of Preston Alley running north from Preston Street to an unnamed alley.
This was a request by ADM Milling to close this portion of Preston Street, which is located behind their facility. It was presented to the Planning Commission, and they have recommended approval of it to you.
Okay, any questions from council? And again, this is an ordinance on first reading. and
Mr.
I'll-
Chairman.
Yes.
Stan, good morning. This runs north and south Preston, right? Beside ADM.
Yes, sir.
With respect to the neighbors, have they been contacted concerning the request?
We send out notices to anybody affected by it, yes, sir, and we haven't received any comments back.
And with that particular alley, there's no residential there, is that correct?
Most of the houses have been removed on that street, and anything that is accessed by it has other access, so there's no problem with that. We have reviewed that as a part of the application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing on anyone who would like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion, second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 4 is consideration of the ordinance to close and abandon an unimproved section of Birchwood running north from Chargene Drive to a dead end.
You have the materials pertinent to this request, and this is, as the mayor said, unimproved. If you went out there and tried to find it, it would just look like grass. So it's just a right-of-way that was dedicated at one time that's not needed anymore, and we are asking you to abandon it. And it was presented to the Planning Commission. They have recommended it to you.
Okay, any questions from council? If not, we'll open the public hearing on this first reading and ask if there's anyone here who would like to be heard on this matter, either in opposition to or support of. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, and is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
And a second. Discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 5 is the annexation progress report, 2011. There'll be really no second reading required on this. Is there a, Stan, is part of state statute, is a public hearing
Yes, sir. The
required?
state
Okay.
statute requires that a public hearing be held.
Okay. You want to go ahead and
I will. You have the progress report in your packet, and I'll be happy to go through it page by page if you'd like, but I don't think that probably wise, take up too much time. But I will say, as a synopsis, everything at this point, and as state statute says, 6 months into an annexation after we've been effective, we're required to give you a progress report on delivery of service, and we are on schedule at this point. So that's basically what this plan of service, or excuse me, the progress report says. And should anything change, of course, we would report that back to you. The statute requires that 6 months in, we give you a progress report, and then yearly after that. So we are continuing to proceed with all the plans of services and delivery of services, and we are on schedule at this point.
Okay, any questions from council as to the progress report of the annexation?
How many total residents is in that annexation report there?
How many
New
people?
residents,
Estimate about 1,667 people.
And that brings the city's population up to what now,
Uh,
roughly?
Roughly about
68.
68.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council?
What's the estimated time on the fire station, on getting it built?
We're going through that process now, and Susan White, our purchasing agent, is kind of handling that. And if you'd like her to come up and
Okay.
tell you, she can tell you that.
Okay.
Susan, you got a timeline?
Bid should go out in a couple of weeks, and hopefully the fire station will be finished before the 1st of July.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Any other, thank you. Any other questions from council? Stan, I can assume no vote is indicated on this, on being a progress report, but I will, by state statute, open a public hearing to see if there's anyone here who would like to make any comments as to the progress of or lack of progress as far as the plan of services for the newly annexed area. Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and move on.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Item 6, I think we had some people, is he? Okay, all right. Item 6 is consideration of amendment to an existing ordinance, Title 8, Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 1, Intoxicating Liquors, Section 8-117, regarding sales to underage persons and persons visibly intoxicated. And we have, Tony, you mind, I think we're going over to the right-hand side. Bob, just pull that chair out if you like, and just shove it over to the side. I'd like to welcome Blake McMeans, who was in our city last night and made a presentation at the, very powerful presentation at the NED, with well over 100 young people present. And also, Bob Lindsay, and will make the presentations again. Richard Barber's also here from the Anti-Drug Coalition, and thank you all for being here. Turn it over to you all.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. On behalf of the Jackson Wine and Spirits Retailers Association, we're asking you to stand with us in making a difference in a lot of people's young lives here in this community. All too frequently in our stores, we have groups of young people coming in. Generally, there's one 21-year-old or 22-year-old. The others range from 16 years old to 20. It happens a lot of times when we're really busy and the store is full of people. You happen to look over and see that they've got a cart and they're loading it up for the 21-year-old to check out with. You know, there's only one reason to come into a liquor store in Jackson, Tennessee. You can't buy chips, you can't buy soda, you can't buy a candy bar. We sell only one item, and that's alcoholic beverages. It's against the law for these young people to possess, to consume, or to buy these items. Without a parent or legal guardian, we don't feel they have a business in our stores. And we respectfully ask you to pass this measure, especially before we enter this busy holiday season when so many kids are home from school. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Richard?
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. We appreciate being heard on this. I'm honored to be the current president of the Jackson-Madison County Anti-Drug Coalition. The mission of the Anti-Drug Coalition is to affect policy, one of the missions is to affect policy change in our local community to address issues related to underage alcohol use. Certainly, this ordinance fits within that mission. We've lost a lot of our kids here in this community. You know, the car wrecks are the leading cause of death for kids 18 to 24 years old. Half of those car wrecks involve alcohol. We're here, and many members of our coalition are here today to support this ordinance. As Bob said, there's only one reason to go into a liquor store, and that's to buy liquor. We strongly urge the council to give deliberate thought to passing this ordinance. There's absolutely no reason for a young person to be in that store. It relieves the burden of the retailer, and it helps protect our kids. It puts a barrier between our kids and alcohol use. Our mission's not about prohibition. It's about responsible use of alcohol and guarding against irresponsible use and underage use. And again, we strongly urge the council to give deliberate thought to passing this ordinance. Thank you. We appreciate being heard.
Thank you, Richard.
One thing I forgot, Mayor, I'd like to ask for our retailers to stand.
Sure, sure. All the retailers, if you're here, would you please stand and be recognized?
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here in support. Thank you.
And we might do that with our anti-drug
Yeah,
coalition too.
the
Mike.
members of the Anti-Drug Coalition who work hard year-round. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. Blake, I think the council is aware of your story. Thank you for being here this morning, and we'll open the mic to you.
Yeah, I'm definitely asking you guys to keep alcohol out of the hands of people who it doesn't belong in. And now that could be someone underage, that could be someone who has no business being in the hands of. And so please, so no one has to go through what I've been through. I mean, you definitely don't want to go through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Any questions from council as to these three individuals?
Excuse me, I had a question, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you for being here. Good morning, Richard. Surely we recognize the importance of the issue. I guess my only question is the only difference in what you are proposing and what's currently on the books is that a person under 21 cannot come in the liquor store at all under your proposal. Is that correct?
They can come in with a parent or legal guardian, and just like my store is right across the parking lot from Kroger. Frequently in the afternoons, we see ladies that have bought their groceries and they
Come on over.
come in, they've got a toddler on their hip, buying a bottle of wine to go with dinner.
Sure.
As long as they're in the supervision of a parent or legal guardian, we don't have a problem with that.
Okay, but that is the only difference?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cobb, would you want to elaborate
Well,
on the,
I'm sorry.
I've asked Lewis to kind of give the council an overview of the change.
Y'all hear me?
Yes.
In there. We think that it gives the police a few more tools and clarity. It allows the owner to check IDs of people in the store. It allows them to check IDs of people in the parking lot.
Okay.
It allows them to say, if you are not of age, you need to leave, and if they refuse to leave, it's trespass, which then allows the police to come in, and as they sort through what needs to be done, it's clear what everybody's rights and responsibilities are. And in talking to the police, they thought that would be helpful in enforcement.
Thank you.
Bob, could you elaborate on what you're doing in your stores?
Well, right now, our partnership with the Community Anti-Drug Coalition, they have supplied us with training kits that even have video instruction, manuals to study, guides to better ID people, and it actually requires a written exam be taken, and we're requiring our employees and ourselves to pass that exam, And the coalition then issues us a sticker that goes on our front door that states that we're properly trained in the carding techniques to sell alcohol. And may I refer back to one thing I forgot to Councilman Brooks' question. Another issue that we deal with occasionally, that this law we feel like will help us address, is young people coming on our parking lots, especially at night, and they're trying to pay someone to come in and buy liquor for them. This actually specifies that they cannot be loitering in the parking lots.
Okay. Thank you.
I used to do that a bunch. Just hang out in the parking lot and wait for someone who I thought would buy it for me, and then pay them to go get it, and then they get it and come back, and then I have the alcohol.
Okay.
One last comment. I can't, being a parent myself, I can't imagine that a responsible parent would be opposed to this ordinance. They would want their child in the liquor store unattended.
Understand.
Okay, just one comment. I mean, I think this is wonderful. I'm certainly going to vote for it. But, what if someone comes in the store and say they're 40 years old and they've got a 15-year-old person with them? How are you going to know if that person is their legal guardian?
Being totally honest, that might be hard. You might be under the impression by just observation that it is their child.
I mean,
That's a tough question.
yeah, but at least this is a step. It may not get them
Yes.
all, but it's going to probably get
But
95% of them.
what
Yeah.
we're used to dealing with is that one that's a few years older, that's, he's got the ID, and he's making the purchase for all the rest of them.
I just know from working with teenagers so long that they'll just now find a much older person that could be their dad, maybe.
Right.
But this is definitely needed and a
Yeah.
good step.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys. Any additional questions or comments from council? Oh, if not, again, thank you, guys. Now, we're on first reading or amendment to an ordinance, which does call for a public hearing. So let me just open the public hearing and see if there's anyone here who would like to speak in support or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance. And I think we've had people standing in support of. If there's anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to the passage of this ordinance. If not, then we'll close the public hearing and call for a motion.
I make that motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? If not, council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Under item 8, second readings, consideration of ordinance to rezone property located on the south side of Ridgecrest Road, just east of Campbell Street, from AO Agriculture Open Land District to O Office District and RG2 PRD, General Residential Plan Residential Development District, containing 19.64 acres, submitted by Chris Tursky on behalf of Northwind LLC.
Move the adoption.
We have a motion for
Second.
adoption. And a second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, item 9, under new business, consideration of a resolution to submit a private act to the Tennessee General Assembly as to revisions to the city charter. I think council has those revisions in order to be submitted to the General Assembly once the council approves the full packet. Any questions or any comments while we have the attorney here? And if not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Council have any discussion on these revisions? If not, council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, those revisions will be submitted to our legislative delegation to put before the General Assembly in January. Item 2 is consideration request by Harold Carter, President of the Jackson-Madison County NAACP, to adopt a resolution to rescind recent Tennessee legislation requiring photo identification for voting. Mr. Carter?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for allowing me to come before you this morning with this very important effort on the part of many organizations across the state of Tennessee to rescind the action taken by the Tennessee General Assembly on last legislative session in regards to photo ID. This is an occurrence that's been happening across the nation with several states doing exactly what Tennessee is attempting to do. We contend that there is not an outbreak of voter fraud in the state of Tennessee, that as you look back in the last several to 10 years of election, there's been millions of votes cast, but very few fraudulent attempts and very few prosecutions as it relates to the total number. Someone said you probably get struck by lightning or win the lottery before there's a voter fraud in the state of Tennessee. We support good governance, we support fair elections, we support efforts to defend our voting rights as well as those who protect them. Those election county folks have done a good job over the years. They continue to do a good job. We believe that they will also do a better job as time goes forward. But a photo ID is something that's an extra barrier for those that are senior citizens, those that are young people in college, those that are lacking the type of transportation, people that do not have a birth certificate. State Representative Steve McDaniel, Republican out of Parker's Crossroad, who did not vote for the legislation, said in a startling point, it takes the average person, particularly in rural West Tennessee, to travel 40 miles to get that photo ID. But that's not the only thing. Along with this, we have incurred, as most of you know, the difficulties in voting and casting early ballot. When offices open up at 9 o'clock and then close at 4 o'clock, that tells a lot of people that your vote is not counted. But the photo ID is something that is not necessary. We tend to think it is an additional poll tax, that the measure does not warrant the type of action that the state legislature has proposed. There's a lot of examples. I could give you lots of examples when people are trying to get their voter ID card at present across the state of Tennessee, from the amount of money that one would pay, different from some parts of the state as opposed to others. You've got elderly people that are trying to find the documents necessary in order to get something. A lot of people do not have passports. A lot of people do not have driver's license. As a matter of fact, I think you know that in Tennessee, the law prior to this was that if you were a certain age, you did not have to have your picture on a driver's license in the state of Tennessee. Students are going to be hit by this hard as well. We're just asking the City Council to put forth a non-binding resolution. Doesn't have the fact of law in it, but it says something to people that you represent in this community that you believe that is unfair, that going toward with this effort would decrease the amount of voters in our area. You know that Tennessee was only second least state with the amount of voting that it had in the 2010 election. Second least vote. Don't know who was number one, but Tennessee was number 2 with the least votes cast out of all of our states. We know that we can do better getting votes out. We know that citizens have that right in order to cast a vote, whether they want to or not, for whatever party they want to. That's not the issue. The issue is that access to the voting place in such a manner that gives everyone the opportunity to utilize that vote. We hope that with the language crafted, that would allow this body to say, City of Jackson to say that it is not necessary and request that they rescind it. State Senator Lowe Finney has put forth the legislation. We'll be putting forth that in one of the coming sessions this year, next year, and we hope that you all will give that support to him, at least symbolically, with the rescinding of this action from your letter or this proposal. And with that, I'll answer any question that you might have, and pray tell that you vote in favor of this effort.
Any questions of,
No questions, Mayor, just a statement if I may.
okay, sure. Go ahead.
Good morning, Harrell. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Council.
Politics 101 suggests that there are two ways to win an election. One, get more people to vote for you, or two, get fewer people to vote for your opponent. Unfortunately, our state legislature, which is in lockstep with other conservative legislators and governors across the country, has chosen the latter. There is nothing more sacred in democracy than the right to vote. So an attack on voting rights is an attack on democracy. Every citizen has a right to cast their ballot. Discriminating against the poor, the young, minorities, and the disabled is an unthinkable violation of the evolved principles of this great country. Some have said that these actions smack of the blatant racism of the past that gave us poll taxes and literacy tests. Supporters of this law say they are necessary to combat voter fraud, but that, to put it bluntly, is a lie. There is no evidence, none, that fraud is a major problem in the state of Tennessee, nor any state for that matter. Rolling Stone magazine reports a major probe by the Justice Department between 2001 and 2007 failed to prosecute a single person for going to the polls and impersonating an eligible voter, which the anti-fraud laws are supposedly designed to stop. In a 2007, the Brennan Center for Justice reported that they were not aware of any documented cases in which individual non-citizens either intentionally registered to vote or voted knowing that they were ineligible. The overwhelming majority of voter fraud actually occur via absentee ballots. This year, more than 30 states devised changes to their voting laws. A dozen more passed restrictive rules requiring voters to present state-issued photo IDs. This is according to the National Conference of State Legislators. Florida and Ohio will cut in half the number of days for early voting. A coalition of groups that includes the League of Women Voters, the American Civil Liberties Union, and the NAACP have said that the state's new voter ID law will, quote, create artificial and insurmountable barriers at the ballot box, unquote. For instance, in the state of Tennessee, over 675,000 Tennesseans aged 18 and older who, according to the Department of Safety, either have no driver's license or have a license that does not carry a photo. These citizens may be eligible to vote, but unless they obtain a state-issued photo ID, they will not be allowed to. People living in rural areas will still have to travel long distances to obtain an ID. The elderly, poor, disabled, and even some college students may have trouble getting to state offices for an ID. We don't have a vote as council people, but we do have a voice, and that voice needs to be heard in Nashville. Send the message that in Jackson, Tennessee, we hold dear the right to vote and will do everything in our power to protect that franchise. So I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Councilman.
good morning, Mr. Carter.
Good morning, Council.
With respect to the resolution that you're asking us to support, I understand wholeheartedly what you're saying. As a youngster growing up, remembering the Jim Crow laws, remembering the poll taxes, anything to disable or discourage the right to vote, disenfranchisement, suppression efforts of the vote. A photo ID, the concept and the ideal is not wrong, but it's wrong to say that a college student with a photo ID is not acceptable to vote in the voting process. What kind of message are we sending to young folks in this country, in particular our college students, if they cannot vote with their ID? The motor voter law of 1993 was enacted to encourage and to enlarge the participation of voters. This takes us back. Now, if we want to impose, and it is law,
Yeah.
if we want to impose the ID law, why don't we, and I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to everybody about it, why don't we let our local election commissions take a photo, require photo ID of every registered voter and every new voter? It's simple. We take that to the legislature. it just makes sense to me that we do something like that. As my colleague has already said, 675,000 voters in Tennessee will be affected by this new law. With respect to voter fraud, there's only 2% of the total population and the total voters of Tennessee voter fraud. 2%. That's very low. On the other hand, the law is here at this particular time. We must mobilize and educate our community about the new voter ID law, conduct outreach programs, help the voters who are going to be disenfranchised. With respect to the future, to measure the effect on end results, before the next state legislative session, meet with our state legislators to rectify this particular voter ID law. Mr. Carter, I wholeheartedly support your resolution, understand what you're saying, but understand that the law is here and we have to energize our voters, and at the same time do something to rectify the new voter ID law. But we must not sit still. We must not say that we can't vote. We must find means to vote. Voting is a right and a privilege, and every citizen who is of age should be able to vote without the suppression of the voting right. I'm in concurrence with your organization, the NAACP, to have the bill rectified. But I'm also in concurrence to say to you in the organization, to everyone present, that it's here, and we got to deal with it through education and mobilizing the voters, and make sure we get those IDs so we won't sit on the sideline. The suppression of vote may be the hidden agenda, but let us not sit on the sideline with respect to voting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bear, I suppose just commend those two gentlemen there, and I would say too that we are doing the education, and we are in the communities now addressing a lot of the issues. One thing is important to note: this is not just an African American problem. This is a white problem with senior citizens. It is a student population that makes up of all different nationalities and faiths. It is one that I think that obviously when you take a look back at it, is an unnecessary law that's in place and should be rescinded, and we are working on that aspect as other legal remedies as well. But this is important, and you're correct, is that we have to educate our population to not only get out there and motivate to understand it, but to get out there and vote as well, and I thank you.
Okay, any comments, any questions?
I have one question.
Sure, go ahead, Councilman.
I read that law, but and somewhere in there, it didn't tell me that they wouldn't, nobody, if they didn't have a photo ID, that they would still be able to vote, but they would investigate their ID and so forth.
Councilman
I
Dean.
mean, it's not that the person going will not be able to vote. They'll just have to go through a due process, is my understanding. Is that correct?
You can vote a provisional ballot, but you have 48 hours to produce the required photo ID. Otherwise, your vote will not count. And of course, if you
Well, you
say
can vote
something,
absentee, can you not?
you can vote absentee. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that you have to vote first in person to apply for that. If I'm not mistaken.
I'm afraid you could mail an absentee ballot.
We are looking at, there's several things since that law has been enacted, it's been tweaked and changed, and I think it's changing. I think at one point in time, there was an $8 fee in one Department of Public Safety. At another time, there was a $13 fee. There's been all kinds of issues been raised by this, and I think they're still trying to tweak it from Nashville, but there will be a hearing on it when the legislature starts in session to kind of clean up and really to rescind it.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council?
Well, I'd just like to make a comment, Mr. Carter. You know, those groups of people that you mentioned that you felt would be hampered in some way and unable to get this voter ID. My mother didn't fit in any of those categories, but my mother voted every year until the day she died, and she was 98 years old. I know if she were alive today, I would get her a photo ID. She never drove. She never had anything like that, but I would have made sure that I got her one. I feel that in requiring the photo ID, if someone goes to that trouble, we're going to see more people voting than ever before. I believe that. I really, truly believe it. Because when you have a little bit more invested in it, you're definitely, I think, going to be at the polls. Now, I don't understand about this fee business, you know. I don't like the idea of having to pay a fee to get something that will make you eligible to vote. That bothers me. That's like a poll tax. That bothers me. I'm thinking, from what I read, they're trying to take that out, and I hope that they do. But I do. I appreciate so much everything you said, and I appreciate what Mr. Councilman, Buchanan said. We've got to make sure that these people who are having trouble getting the photo ID, that we all volunteer to take them and make sure they get it. And I guarantee you, I will be one that will do whatever I can to take people to get it.
Councilman, thank you for your comments. I might add, too, that along with that fee for a photo ID, you have to expense the time and the trouble and the waiting in line. If you need to contact the Department of Health to get a birth certificate or things, it's costing more money. Some of these folks have been on fixed incomes. The situation that your mother was in is not similar to what it is right now today, that she would have to be required to show more documentation, where you could afford to help her navigate through this. There's a lot of senior citizens that are living at home alone, that do not have a wherewithal and depend on other people to try to move them around, et cetera. But they do want to vote and should be given that right to vote without any encumbrances on the part of the state.
Okay, any other comments from council? Ms. Carter, we appreciate your comments.
Harvey, let me ask you a question.
Go
Harvey,
ahead.
what was that you were talking about, that the local current election commission could?
What I was saying there, Councilman Bray and to the other council members, it just makes sense that the local election officials, since the law is here, it just makes sense that the local election commission should be in charge of taking the photo IDs and make a general photo ID for the whole entire state of Tennessee. It just makes sense for just one location, election commission, to take the photo ID for present voters and new voters, and to have a generalized concept photo ID for the whole state. But we'll leave that up to our legislators.
Well, we're on our way to it. Obviously, a national photo identification card is what this will eventually end up with. Everyone that's a citizen of the United States that want to participate would have to have a national identification card.
Mayor, I move
Okay.
we approve the resolution.
Okay,
And support.
let me just indicate this to council. At this point, we really have no resolution, and my suggestion to council, you can do anything you like, is you have the issue on the table, and the issue is in the hands of the legislative body serving this city, meaning you all, and the General Assembly will not go into session until January, so leave it in the hands of council to formulate a resolution with assistance if you need it, to present back to this council at a future meeting, whether it be December or January. That would be my suggestion, since we do not have a resolution on the table to vote on this morning. Does that, everybody understand what the issue is? Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Carter, your request is to adopt a non-binding resolution to rescind the Tennessee legislation requiring photo ID. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, and it's more or less a standard type of opportunity, and I understand the mayor's problem with crafting it, but it basically is a simple non-binding resolution asking for the rescinding of that particular law for the purposes that we talked about here today.
Mr. Chairman, let me move that we adopt the resolution, non-binding resolution, to rescind the recent Tennessee legislation requiring photo ID for voting.
Okay, again, it's going to be difficult for council
There's
to
no one on the table.
adopt a resolution which we do not have in front of us.
There's not one on the table.
There's not one on the table, but there could be one after due consideration of a month till we get into the December meeting, then we can, with council's leave, can
This is
formulate.
what they want to take to the legislature in January, is that correct?
Yes, sir, Senator Lofini will take that for him as support for his law that he will try and get passed.
So I really think the council will have ample time, if you're so led, to formulate a resolution which can be voted on by the legislative body of the city. Everybody understand where we are there? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Okay, item 3 is consideration to adopt following a public hearing, a 2011 U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance Grant. Captain Campbell, I know we have some personnel here who'll be able to explain this to you and answer any questions the council may have.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This is the 2011 Justice Assistance Grant. Back in July, we presented it to you to get permission to file the application and to do a public hearing. Since that time, we have received the award in the amount of $69,722. The mayor has executed the contract with the Department of Justice. It is a 50-50 split grant between Madison County Sheriff's Department and the City of Jackson. And today, we're simply asking you to adopt it and allow us to begin to execute the contract.
Okay, any questions of Chief Campbell?
Did you say this is a matching grant?
No, this is not a matching
Not
grant.
a matching grant?
It's 100%.
Those are the best kind.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
To be split 50-50.
Yeah.
It is 50-50 split with Madison County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
Okay, before we have a motion or a second, I think a public hearing is required
No,
here.
you did that in July.
We've already done that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a
Second.
motion, second.
Second.
Discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Chief. Councilwoman Foote has asked to be recognized before we get down to item 4, the board appointments.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. We all know that Friday is a very important day in our country. It's the day that we pay special tribute to our veterans. And we don't have a very large group here in our meeting today. I'd say probably maybe just 30 or 35 that are sitting in the room right now. But I wonder if we have any veterans. If you ever served in the military, or if you were in the National Guard, certainly, raise your hands. Okay. We have several hands going up on the city council and out there. I'd say at least probably 12 or 13. Would you stand? I'd like to read just a short piece to honor you. Would you please stand so that we can properly honor you? You veterans, please stand. The piece is called Soldier, and it's by George Skypeck, who was a soldier. I was that which others did not want to be. I went where others did not want to go, and did what others failed to do. I asked nothing from those who gave nothing, and reluctantly accepted the thought of eternal loneliness should I fail. I have seen the face of terror, felt the stinging cold of fear, and enjoyed the sweet taste of a moment's love. I have cried, pained, and hoped, but most of all, I have lived times others say would be best forgotten. But I know in my heart that someday I will be able to say that I was proud of what I was, a soldier. We are proud of you. From the mayor and the city council, thank you for your service, and let's please honor them all.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 is some board appointments. Take each one of these individually. I suppose we should. Jackson Housing Board, the reappointment of Clarence Boone. Is there a motion?
I make that motion.
Motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
Vote is unanimous.
On the Health, Education, Housing Facilities Board, the reappointment of Helen Owens.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
On the Keep Jackson Beautiful Board, the appointment of Marcus Chandler to replace David Mathis.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
And on the Community Redevelopment Agency, a name which the council will recognize, the appointment of Willie L. Moore Jr. to replace Greg Mylan.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, council. Item 5 is consideration of budget amendment. Ms. Bell?
We have
several this morning, so we'll take them one at a time. First one that you have before you is a transfer from the general fund to Pringles Park. Funds are being transferred from the general fund unanticipated to capital budget to cover $1,975 needed for Pringles Park capital budget for an erosion problem on the slope from Pringles Park going to the Sportsplex.
Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Have a motion.
Second.
Second, discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The second one that we have before you is something that you approved last month. This is a budget amendment to move funds to appropriation to other agencies for $175,000 for the amount granted to the Youth Challenge Program during the October council meeting.
So move.
Second.
Motion, second, discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The third amendment that we have today is the Jackson Police Department has received a grant in the amount of $39,949.85 for crash reduction enforcement from the state of Tennessee. This grant will be used to cover overtime and benefits for employees working in this enforcement program.
Is there a motion?
moved.
Motion. Is there a second?
This is a non-matching.
Non-matching.
Second.
Got a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The next amendment that we have is basically some cleanup work that is due to the audit. The HUD loan received for the CRA is now being moved from Community Development Fund to the new Community Redevelopment Fund per the audit requirements as of FY11. This will reflect the interest and principal payments on the HUD loan in the CRA fund, all of which will be reimbursed by the community development. And this is just basically moving it between funds per the audit that took place June 30th.
Did all the council hear that explanation, rather than breaking out into a break dance? Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion. Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, the next amendment that you have is the public hearing that you just had with Chief Campbell. The Jackson Police Department has received notification that they have received the 2011 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Grant in the amount of $69,722 jointly with the Madison County Sheriff's Department. There is no match required for this grant.
So move.
Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The next amendment that we have is another cleanup. The Public Services Complex capital improvement for heat and air and sewer system were budgeted in the Health and Sanitation Fund rather than the capital fund. Need to be moved. This complex service serves other departments in addition to Health and Sanitation and was inappropriately budgeted in the Health and Sanitation Fund. The move of this request is $64,500.
Is there a
No
motion?
new money.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The next amendment that we have is to transfer funds from the general fund unanticipated expenses of $39,000 to the capital fund to cover capital requests that have been received for the EMA for repeaters, radios, and outdoor warning system replacements.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
And the last one that we have for today is, again, this is an FY11 budget amendment. This will date back to June 30th due to audit requirements to transfer funds from the sinking fund and the general fund to clear up the due to from accounts owed by the Sportsplex to each of these funds as of June 30th, 2011. And the amount of this amendment is $234,545.99 to the sinking fund, $67,920.81 to the general fund.
Is there a approval? A second?
Second.
Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bell. Before we go to the final item, let me just remind the council that you have in your position here a book which was presented by Chief Stewart this morning, a history of service of Jackson Fire Department. Make that available to you all, and I've looked at it and read it, and a very interesting publication. Thank you, Chief, for that. Item 6 is consideration of invoices over $10,000.
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.
Good job, man. It looks like